Good afternoon, the Senate Government Operations Committee back with you on Wednesday, the 25th of January. And we're going to hear from the Association of Vermont Chiefs of Police. We have with us Chief Doug Allen. And so we're going to introduce ourselves. I am Senator Ruth Hardy from the Addison District.
Olivia Parker, Committee Assistant.
Senator Tanya Vyhovsky, Chittenden Central.
The next is Senator Becca White. She's from the Windsor District, and she'll be with us momentarily.
Rob Norris, Franklin.
Senator Ann Watson from the Washington District.
And Allison Clarkson, Windsor District.
All right, that's who we are. So why don't you start, Chief Allen, and tell us who you are and what you want us to know about your association.
So my name is Doug Allen. I am the president of the Vermont Association of Chiefs of Police. You may hear us called as our acronym of VACOP. We are about a little over 50 different organizations and chiefs that are represented by us in our association. We have been in place for a number of years here in Vermont. Personally, I am the chief of the Colchester Police Department up here in Chittenden County. I've been in law enforcement just completed in January my 39th year. So I've been here in the state in full-time law enforcement for a little while. I started my career down in the southern part of the state, down in Wilmington. So I've had the benefit of seeing things from a number of different perspectives. Certainly, our chiefs they're an organization that represents many different aspects of law enforcement here in the state of Vermont. Everything from our largest agency, Burlington, to our 1 and 2 officer departments that we find around the state. So we represent all of those aspects of municipal law enforcement here in Vermont.
Excellent. And do you have any legislative priorities that you want us to make sure that we don't forget, that we work on, or are there things you don't want us to do? What would you like us to know about your priorities as the chiefs of police?
So we did put together some priorities back before the new year. Probably the first one, as you may have heard, law enforcement across Vermont and all aspects of law enforcement have a real problem with recruitment and retention, getting enough officers on the street to do the job that we're tasked to do. And that runs the gamut from Department of Public Safety, the Vermont State Police, all the way through our smaller agencies. Different kind of difficulties as you go through the agencies. Here in Chittenden County, we compete an awful lot with not only our fellow municipal officers, but also with state law enforcement people and federal law enforcement people. But beyond that, it's really been a challenge to get young, qualified people to enter this profession. It's a tough profession. It's always been a tough profession. But certainly the difference in my career from when we would get several hundred applications for an opening, those days seem to be in the past. We now aggressively go out and recruit. We want the same kind of things that we hear demands from the public. We want good, qualified, educated officers to go out and do a very tough job. So that's been a challenge, and some of that challenge has been to be blunt, some villainization, if you will, villainizing the profession of law enforcement. There's been a lot of very pointed, very difficult discussions that have happened publicly over the past year or so. I very much appreciate this opportunity to meet with the committee on kind of a get to know you basis, and I really do appreciate that, and my members appreciate that. We've regularly meet with representatives from the Department of Public Safety and Commissioner Morrison, and prior to her, Commissioner Sherling, and we work very hard to get on the same page in our presentations to the public and to the legislature. So that would be a more civil discourse, I think, is what we would like to see, and that's actually the top priority of VACOP this year. Going down through we have concerns about the judiciary and how the backlog of the judiciary. We see that as a problem. We recognize the backlog as a problem. We have concerns that how that backlog will be handled. Those criminal cases that are backed up in our courts from a variety of reasons, both certainly from COVID, but for other reasons as well. We hope we don't see a wholesale dismissal of cases before the judiciary. We think that would be a disservice to the many victims that are part of those criminal cases. And we would like to see a careful approach in how that backlog is taken care of. Along with the judiciary, we have concerns about expungement of criminal records versus sealing of criminal records. We see that there certainly is a need to have sealing of records so that people are not paying for crimes that they've already paid for throughout their entire life. And sealing is we feel is a much better way of approaching that issue than expungement. Once a criminal case is expunged, it is wiped out of the records, everyone's records here at my police department, through the Vermont Crime Information Center, through the courts. That record is gone. That creates some real problems for us. Sealing a criminal record, at least if you apply to a court, a judge could unseal a record in certain cases. If someone is applying for a possession of a firearm or other kind of situations, that a reason can be brought to a judge and a case can be then unsealed in the future. Expungement is permanent and is non it can't be revoked. Our third, and I only have 4, so don't think I'm going to ramble on too long, but mental health resources. We are fortunate here in Chittenden County. Our department, along with other communities here in Chittenden County, have gone forward for the last couple of years, at least since 2018, and we have engaged with Howard Mental Health to have social workers work side by side. We steer away from the term embedded because we don't want anyone thinking that the health workers work for for law enforcement. They work side by side with us for better outcomes for the many mental health people that people that are dealing with mental health issues that we encounter. That kind of resource on a statewide level, we feel would be very, very important, and that is progressing through the system, I believe. And the last thing I care to speak about is the Vermont Criminal Justice Council. The council went through significant changes over the past, I believe, 18 months to 2 years. They have grown significantly. They have new charges. We would hope that the council is properly resourced. We fear that they're not at this point. Certainly they're looking for a staff attorney, having difficulty filling that position. They also need an investigator to work on the what we call the Act 56 issues in law enforcement. All our certification issues. If an officer has a misconduct charge that is brought to the council and under Act 56, and the council has some obligation to proceed on that. We have to provide to them as chiefs of police and law enforcement executives. We have to provide to the council a completed internal, but an investigator has to look at that internal, make sure standards and act appropriately on it. So that's going to take some resources that we hope the council will receive. And that's a whole lot of rambling I did in a very short time, so I apologize.
no.
for,
You did not ramble at all. That was great. That was a really great, very clear list, and I appreciate it. Are there any questions for the chief? Senator Clarkson.
Wearing my workforce development hat, Doug, I'm just curious, other than the challenges of, public perception about policing and the way you balance that with, all the police shows they love and watch, so it's both the challenges we know in our communities and they are also revered in so many different ways. But I mean, other than the public image, what are the barriers that you're really seeing in terms of why you're not being able to recruit? Because you represent a lot of municipal departments that pay very poorly or pay poorly, I would say at this point. And one of the reasons you keep getting people poached to the VSP is pay and retirement and we know, actually, I have young people who actually do care about retirement, which is interesting because our earlier witnesses were saying they didn't care so much about that. But so I'd like to ask you, what are the biggest barriers you're facing at the moment, other than public image, which we all know needs to be continuously worked on?
Senator, last year I would tell you that one of the biggest problems that we were facing was a morale issue, particularly when the discussion of qualified immunity came out. There were a lot of misconceptions about what qualified immunity was. We had to educate our own officers as to what qualified immunity was, and that was a kind of a focal point for officers feeling that they weren't being supported. Outside of that, Senator, I would say that pay certainly is an issue. Your police officer, as you're well aware, works around the clock. We work different shifts. We work in tough environments, and those officers and the pay for those officers come out of the general fund of each municipality. Convincing a community that this is something to invest in is not always easy. And I think they do see in some communities an easy out where if they don't fund their department or if they underfund their department, that they fall back on the Department of Public Safety. We're seeing that even in communities here in Chittenden County, where there are at least 2 communities that are looking at Department of Public Safety to help bolster their forces. But I would say really the reputation of law enforcement has suffered significantly. To get a dedicated person who wants to come in and serve their community with all those other challenges that I mentioned is a tougher sell than it used to be.
May I just follow up on that?
Of course.
So what are you doing about that in Colchester? What are you doing to enhance the public perception image of law enforcement in your community? Because I know what Robbie Blish is doing in our community,
Yep.
but I'm just curious what you're doing in yours.
Yep. So we have taken a number of steps, and we have tried to reach out to non-traditional populations to try to bolster our diversity in applicants. We do not want to be in a position where we have to lower our standard. And so we are careful to try to attract the best applicants from as diverse a population as we can. We try to support as many female, as many BIPOC, as many. We've actually been fortunate to work with the Muslim community here that used to be based in Colchester, is now based in South Burlington. But we have good contacts and have been able to hire several Muslim officers in the last year. We have open house that we made special invitations to different portions of the community. We've worked with Dr. Avila at the University of Vermont, who helps us through her contacts to invite different populations in to meet with us. We have expanded our search through colleges and universities that offer criminal justice. And we have looked at people coming out of the military to try to attract those folks. So those are steps we've taken. I will tell you, and I'll tell you honestly, that the police department here in my community, I am extremely fortunate. Both my elected officials, my town administration, and our community is very supportive of Colchester Police. And I am very fortunate, and I recognize that.
That's great. And you have a force of how many?
I'm sorry?
You have how many work?
I have 29 sworn and 8 civilian employees.
Thanks.
Did you have a question? Okay. Well, several of the issues that you mentioned will be taken up down the hall in Judiciary Committee. But certainly, you know, a lot of the things you mentioned will be touched on in here. We are, as I said at the beginning, working on dispatch, and I'm assuming that the chiefs of police have some feelings about that, and maybe depending on where you are and how you're served. And then we're also, and this is tangential to you, but if you have any if you want to weigh in at all, just let me know. We are taking a look at sheriffs and the oversight of sheriff's departments. And since you're law enforcement, that I'm assuming work with sheriff's departments, if you want to testify on that, just let me know. Or any of the things that we take up. I think the Criminal Justice Council issues will be starting over in the House and then coming over to us afterwards. So certainly when we do that, we'll have you in to talk about that as well. But Chief, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that it finally worked, and thanks for your patience as we work through our agenda. And it's really nice to meet you, and we'll have you back later in the session.
That sounds great. Thank you for the opportunity, and everybody have a good day.
Thanks, you too. Okay, we are going to hear from Damien.
Yeah, he's walking over.
Okay, so
And the NBSA, I know it's here too.
well, they're here to watch. They're not on the agenda. But Damien is going to come and talk with us about the state employee benefit retiree benefit situation. And sort of I asked him to walk through some of the legal issues with it and his opinion about it, so we can get a firmer understanding of what our legal counsel thinks.
My appointee is only available till 4:30, so I might set up a call.
Okay.
But I wanted to do my